Your family, your health, our passion. This is Family Practice with Dr. Jeffrey Fox, sponsored by Family Practice Associates of Lexington, PSC. Visit us at fpalex.com and like us on Facebook.
Welcome back. This is the community resource section, and we're going to do a little different tonight. We're going to talk about a podcast, and my guest to help me do that is Raliegh Kincaid, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist who's been retired for, I guess, a little bit about a year from Family Practice Associates. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, you've been here and you've done this before, and you've talked about the therapy and depression and anxiety, but in your new life, retired life, you got into doing a podcast. Why a podcast?
Well, I had thought about doing it for some time, even before I retired, that it might be something fun to do. Honestly, that was the primary motivation. And I literally retired a year and 2 days ago. And my original thought, Dr. Fox, was that you and I would be doing said podcast, but then you talked me into including some other people, and that's what we've done.
Tell us who does the podcast.
Well, I'm sort of the moderator host, and the other two people that are actually in the conversations are Larry Gray, who's the former president of Baptist South Louisville and Baptist South Corbin before that, and Ken Bailey, who's also a retired marriage and family therapist, but also the pastor of the Pilgrim Presbyterian Church in Bonita, Oklahoma, out in the northeast corner of Oklahoma.
So you've done a few episodes now, so let's talk about that, because that's really, it is a community resource if people take the time to listen to that. Yeah. And people take the time to talk, because that was the first episode, is what does it really take to talk? Yeah. And tell me a little bit about that episode.
Well, so the whole thought that I had started doing this thing is kind of the power of conversation. That is, when people take the time to vulnerably, honestly, thoughtfully sit down together and talk, that not only do you have a chance to think on what you believe and know, but it also helps you kind of grow in that. So it's sort of a synergy that happens in a conversation. And a lot of what we talked about, especially early on, the first few were about civil discourse, and that is, in this time of great not civil, in the last few hundred decade, whatever, it's been not civil, and trying to convince ourselves and people that there's a better way to have conversations that not only work better, but you learn from.
So you talk about talking, but you also talk a little bit about listening and safe places.
Yeah, well, and there is no good talking without good listening, and there's no good listening if all you're doing is just trying to plan your next counterattack from that person. You really need to take the time to try to really figure out what it is that they're trying to say and what position they're trying to take in a really honest way.
Also, one of the episodes you talk a little bit about trust.
Yeah. Well, again, I think some of all this is kind of driven by the times. There is this general lack of trust out there. There's a lack of trust in the federal government. There's a lack of trust in the pandemic. We've noticed, especially on the podcast, how even the medical profession was kind of thrown on the bus as being untrustworthy during the COVID pandemic. Now people lost a lot of trust in maybe people they shouldn't have lost trust in.
You talked about trust, and you talk about legacy too. I think Dr. Gary Hartstein just called me old, and we're retired, but there's something to be learned from legacy.
Well, I think so. There's that sort of the audacity to think that you've learned something that people need to know, but also to say that that's probably true, and to put it in some sort of forum out there, whether it be in conversation or a podcast or a book or something that helps them learn from what you've learned, even as you respect that they're in a world that's very different than the world you grew up in. So it's a kind of a complicated push and pull.
Now, the most recent episode come out is I thought one of the better ones that talk about a little bit about trauma.
Yeah. My contention is that everybody, to some degree, trauma's kind of relegated to things like soldiers on the battlefield and people who have gone through personal tragedies, tornadoes, hurricanes. But I think we've all been traumatized in some ways by society and culture lately. I know the pandemic has left a lot of people scared, wary, reactive. That's one of the signs, that overreactivity is one of the signs of trauma. And it's a lot of people hurting. And the thing of it is, to deal with it is not to swallow it down and pretend like it doesn't exist. To deal with it is to be vulnerable and talk about it.
Well, and that's what the podcast talks a little bit. So tell us the name of the podcast and where people can access it.
So the name of the podcast, we just sort of did this as a name generator, is Exploracast, Exploracast, Exploracast. And you can find it on podcasts on Spotify, iHeart, Apple, Prime, all the places that most podcasts are found.
And I will tell you, even though I'm not part of the talking that goes on there, I do a little bit of that.
Yeah, you do the engineering for us.
And there's some real good stuff to listen to there, and we appreciate you coming in and telling us about it.
Glad to. Hope it helps some.
All right. That podcast, Exploracast, a good community resource, and we hope you'll take the opportunity to watch it. So thank you for watching this. Thank you to my guest. If you would like to watch this episode or previous episodes, you can access them through the Family Practice Associates website at fpalax.com or the YouTube channel. Have a great new year and join us next month for more great healthcare information on family practice.